Hello, students. Welcome back to the next lecture in our continuation on classical mechanics. And today we are going to have lecture number 8. In the last class, we have seen something about the constraints and monogenic systems, especially the terminology and definitions. And then we are about to go to the topic on phase portrait and phase plots. But however, we have seen only a small introduction and then stopped there. So today we will look a little bit more detail onto the how to draw the phase plots or what is meant by a phase portrait, and then we will see how this is getting complicated. So the phase plot is going to be renamed when you are going to higher dimensional mathematical space. So especially in the last class I have also explained you what's the difference between a mathematical space and the standard Euclidean space, which is the physical space. The distinction is very important because the entire classical mechanics is on the phase space and the phase space is mathematical space. And this is also going to be higher dimensional. The word higher dimensional is important. Higher dimensional means anything above 3 because 3 is the maximum dimensions that we have for the Euclidean system. And any dimension above 3 is what is generally known as higher dimensional space. So whenever you are going to deal with mathematical spaces, there is no need to worry about visualizing the entire space. If you want to visualize, you can take part of the data and then represent on the usual Euclidean space. That means on a graph paper. That is what we mean by visualization. You cannot visualize the entire data which is there in the mathematical space. This is a very crucially important concept about the space because the word space will be used so frequently and therefore it is necessary to make a clear understanding of the terminology. Essentially, these are the technical jargons that you need to be familiar so that it will be comfortable for you to proceed further. Okay, today we are going to see how to draw the phase space diagram for the case of the simple pendulum. That is how we are going to start. And before starting, let me also inform you that simple pendulum is simple only to the extent of making the apparatus. That means you simply take a thread and then attach a bob, and that's it. You hang it somewhere, and that is the simple pendulum that you have. So, to that extent, that means up to the construction of the apparatus, the simple pendulum is simple. But otherwise, coming to the mathematical aspects, simple pendulum is no longer simple. The mathematics of the simple pendulum is fairly complicated. So that is the first point that I would like to inform you, because if I don't explicitly tell this, then it is most probable that you may think that simple pendulum is too simple that you don't have to pay attention to. So that's why I'm telling you this beforehand. And let us proceed further. The first point or the first starting point about the simple pendulum is to write down the equation of motion, which is quite familiar to you because all the last 3 years of your BSc program, you must have studied the simple pendulum, derivation of the equation of motion, and therefore this equation that I am going to write down on the board should be quite familiar to you. So here I have written down the equation of motion, which means the differential equation of motion, and correspondingly I have also shown a representative diagram, and both of them are quite familiar to you. And the number of degrees of freedom for the system is only 1, and that is only theta. Okay. Even though, in fact, you should remember one thing, that we have the equation of constraint x square plus y square is equal to L square is the constraint that you have, and x comma y will be the two coordinates required. So this gives you 2 degrees of freedom. DYF means degrees of freedom, and this is the equation of constraint. That means one constraint is there. So therefore you subtract 2 minus 1. 2 is the degrees of freedom for two-dimensional planar oscillations. Then out of that, one constraint is there, so you subtract 1. 2 minus 1, that gives you 1. So the 1 will be the final degrees of freedom, or we say that final means we don't want to accept the maximum number of degrees of freedom. You first start with maximum, namely 3 dimension, and since the simple pendulum is going to oscillate in a plane, we say it is 2 dimensional. Then you find that there is a constraint, so subtract that. One constraint is there, which means you also have one equation, therefore subtract 1. So therefore 2 minus 1 gives you final. So this is the final number of degrees of freedom for the case of simple pendulum. So generally you will be doing like this. First you start with maximum number of coordinates required to represent in 3 dimensions. Then you try to find out what are the possible constraints and keep subtracting. And when you reach the whatever minimum possible, that minimum number of coordinates required to specify the state of the dynamical system is what is known as the degrees of freedom. So technically the definition says that it is the minimum number of coordinates required to specify the state of the system completely. State of the system means, the meaning of state is that if you know the variables corresponding to the physical system, then from that variable you must be able to extract all its dynamics. Okay, if it is so, then that is called a state. If some information is missing, then you cannot solve the problem. Okay, that is the meaning of completely specifying. It should not be over specified. Over specified means you have extra equations which is going to contradict your result. So completely specifying means exactly the number of variables that are required to precisely study the properties of the system. That is known as completely. So let us come back to this diagram. We have only one theta into the system. So it is not x, it is not y, but rather it's an angle theta. And therefore, since it is only 1 degree of freedom system, you will be having only one equation of motion. And that one equation is what is written down here. So what is that explanation that I am trying to give is that why you have only one equation of motion here for a case of simple pendulum. The reason is that many number of degrees of freedom is there. If you are going to consider a different problem where 2 degrees of freedoms are there, then you must be having, or you have to have 2 equations of motion, and so on. So if you are going to have 100 degrees of freedom, you will be having 100 differential equations. Each one of them is second order differential equation, and you'll have to solve them all together. So that's the meaning of that. So I would like to emphasize this point, why there is one equation for the case of the simple pendulum. So we have an equation like this. The first thing that you will be noting down, that this is a second order, that is clear to you. This is the second order ordinary differential equation. So that is the first point which is clear. The second point which is also clear is that this equation is non-linear because of the sine theta that is present in the system. So here you have a sine theta, and sine theta is a non-linear function because you can always expand the sine theta is approximately equal to theta minus theta cube divided by 3 factorial plus something like this, theta to the power 5 by factorial minus etc. So therefore you have a power 3, you have a power 5 etc., and therefore sine theta is non-linear. So we make a conclusion that this equation is also a non-linear ordinary differential equation. And it doesn't have a forcing terms on the right hand side, and therefore this is a homogeneous differential equation. If the right hand side of the equation number 1 is not 0, or if there is any other term is present in the system which is independent of theta, then we say that the equation is an inhomogeneous differential equation. So right now such terms are not there, and therefore this is homogeneous ordinary differential equation. And that's all. You need to know only the order. Order is actually derivative. Okay, what is the highest derivative that you have? It's a second order. In fact, there is something called a degree of a differential equation that is generally not important. And degree of the differential equation is what is the power of the highest order. Power of the highest order. So where is the highest order? This is the highest order. So what is the power? That is 1 here. So to the power 1 is there. So therefore, this is a first degree. First degree, second order. That's what we mean to say. When you say first degree, you should always club the degree with the order. Okay, you cannot have different powers of various derivatives. You have to consider only the highest derivative possible. In this case, highest derivative is the second order derivative. And what is the power of that? Means only 1 to the power 1 is there. Therefore, this is the first degree second order ordinary differential equation. In general, the degree of the differential equation is not important. What is important is the order. Order of the differential equation is very important. Why it is important is the solution of the differential equation demands that many number of integrations. If you have an expression like dy by dx, then we say that it is a first order derivative. And if you want to solve this, I have to perform one integration. In principle, that's the meaning. Whether you're able to integrate or not, that's different. But in principle, if you want to remove the first derivative, I need one integration. And suppose if I have a second derivative like this, d square y by dx square, then in principle, I need to perform two integrations in order to calculate y. Because this is d square y, right? So, two derivatives I will have to eliminate, which means two integrations I will have to perform. So, that's the meaning. That is the reason why the order of the differential equation is very important. So, that's the point. Okay, let me erase this. Okay, coming to the solution or coming to the phase space information, before entering into that, let me also make some comments about this particular equation. Now, the solution of the equation 1 is not possible in terms of any of the elementary functions, which means that you can't have a closed form solution to equation number 1. That is because of the non-linearity. So this is the first place where you encounter and observe that the non-linearity present in a differential equation makes its solutions too complicated. In most of the situations, it is too complicated that it cannot be solved. You may have to resort to numerical techniques if you want to get the solution. Analytical techniques may not be possible in many cases. Practical cases, for example, in many of the practical cases, finding the analytical solutions is not possible, and therefore people will move forward to a different technique, most probably the numerical techniques. So therefore, you should also remember that numerical techniques gain very high importance when you are going to deal with nonlinear equations, whether it is algebraic equations or the differential equations. Even the algebraic equations you can't solve easily using the analytical techniques. Let me give an example here. If you have an equation like ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0, this is a quadratic equation because the power there is a 2 here, and this is purely algebraic, no calculus is there. So if you ask the question what is the solution to this equation, you can immediately write down that x equal to minus b plus or minus and whatever you know. So that's formula you can quickly write down. That's fine. So it is simple. But however, when the power increases little bit, for example, if it becomes power 3 ax cube plus bx square plus cx plus d equal to 0. So this is also algebraic equation. No calculus, no derivatives. And now once again we ask the question, what is x? Now you cannot write down a closed form solutions easily. Okay. So as you see that nonlinearity, this is the nonlinearity. 2 is also nonlinear by the way, but that nonlinearity is at least manageable. When the nonlinearity gets little bit complicated, then finding analytical solutions to these equations are fairly difficult, and we will have to resort to some numerical methods. If not numerical methods, some kind of graphical techniques. You'll have to draw a graph for this particular function and then find out where the graph is cutting the x-axis. That is the solution to the equation. So in real life, you remember that any powers that are going to be nonlinear, they are going to give a lot of trouble and they make the mathematics quite complicated. So this is the first point that you need to remember. And when compared to when you are observing the equation for the simple pendulum, the first thing that you need to note down is the existence of a sine theta here that makes the life very difficult. And you make the assumption that sine theta is approximately equal to theta. So that's only an approximation. Usually when you're learning in the school or in the BSc degree, you always make an assumption that sine theta is approximately equal to theta. You see this particular equation, the approximation can be made from here. So this is the power series representation for the sine theta. So here what happens, there is a theta to the power 3, theta to the power 5 is there. I want to neglect all the higher powers. I am cutting it down. Theta to the power 3, theta to the power 5, everything else I will cut it out. And then what is left out is only sine theta, and on the right hand side you have a theta, and therefore this is approximately equal to. Why it is approximately equal to? Because there are so many terms that I have removed on the right hand side. And what basis I am going to remove this is based on the assumption that theta is going to be very small. So if theta is very small, I'll take an example. If theta is very small, like 0.01, then what will happen to the power 3? 0.01 is theta. 0.01 to the power 3 is how much? 10 to the power of minus 6. So therefore, 10 to the power minus 6 is going to be very, very small in comparison to the original theta. What is your original theta? I am going to take original theta as 0.01. So therefore, I am trying to say that this in front of 10 to the, so I can write like this. It is much, much less than 10 to the power of minus 2. So this is my theta. 10 to the power minus 2 is my theta, and 10 to the power minus 6 is theta to the power 3. So therefore, whenever theta is going to be a small number like this, theta to the power 3 is very small, theta to the power 5 is very, very small, and so on. And therefore, I can safely neglect them. And of course, by neglecting, there is going to be a little bit of error. And therefore, you see that this particular symbol approximately equal to theta is to be used. You can't say equal to. It's approximately equal to theta. And by that, what happens is, if you are going to substitute sine theta is approximately theta into the equation number 1, then you will get back the familiar equation to you. Okay. So let me substitute and show that is what is happening to there. So if you are going to substitute this, I will be getting theta double dot plus theta double dot means fine second derivative plus g by L, then multiplied by theta equal to 0. So you get the second equation like this, which means that this kind of assumption makes your life simple in the sense that equation 2 is now linear. So now this is linear. And therefore you can quickly get the solution. You already know the solution, and because g and L is a constant, you can always write down g by L as a k square. G is a constant, L is a constant. Therefore g by L is a constant. Now we are asking the question whether g by L can be positive or negative. G is acceleration due to gravity, it's a positive number. L is the length of the pendulum, that should be a positive number. Therefore g by L is positive number. Now how do you say mathematically a number is positive? If I am going to say that C is a constant, then the doubt will come. C is positive constant or negative constant. You get a doubt. But however, if I am going to write a square, C square is a constant, then C square is guaranteed that is a positive number. So you won't get a doubt whether C square can be negative or not. So that is the purpose of putting a square there. So therefore, G by L, when you write down, it's a constant, but we write it as a k square to emphasize that it is a positive constant. Then the rest of the thing you simply write down k square theta here, plus this side is a theta double dot, and that is equal to 0. And this is traditionally, this is the equation that is quite familiar in mathematics. You have y double dot plus k square times y equal to 0. And the solution is, you already know that it is a times cos kx plus b times sin kx. And then you proceed further. That's fine. We are not going to do that now. So the point that I am trying to emphasize now is that the equation, namely the equation of motion for the simple pendulum, is non-linear, and therefore the mathematics of the simple pendulum is not simple. Which means that the solution to equation number 1 is not simple. You can't get the solution to equation 1 in terms of some elementary functions. You will have to resort to what are known as elliptical functions. Okay. So right now that also we are not going to enter into that topic. So right now our objective is to understand what is the phase portrait of the simple pendulum and how to plot that. So for that, what we will do is, you will come back to this diagram. You now focus your attention to the diagram, and from this diagram, how are you going to start the experiment? So let me show in pink color line, for example. Here in the pink color, I will draw a line like this. So here you have the bob. So this is the theta that you have. So since the theta is going to be measured from the equilibrium position means the vertical line that you have. So in this particular diagram which we have drawn for the simple pendulum, the vertical line That is the one corresponding to the equilibrium. And therefore, any measurement that you are going to make will be made with reference to that axis. And therefore, the arrow is drawn towards the left side in the pink color. And therefore, all the measurements of the angle which are taken to the left side will be minus theta. Whereas any theta that you are going to measure towards the right side of the equilibrium point will be plus theta. That means positive values of the angle. And any angle that you are going to measure towards the pink color will be the negative value of theta. So plus minus values are required. And when the bob is in equilibrium position, theta is 0. Okay, it's neither positive nor negative. So that is the standard convention when you are going to perform measurement. So you remember the schematic diagram of the simple pendulum. You know which side is negative. You know which side is positive value of theta. And therefore, if you are going to make measurements, then the tabular column will look like this. This is only a schematic tabular column. We are not going to write down any numbers. And once you get an idea of what is happening here, we can go to the plotting of the data. So we are going to have some time. We measure starting at t equal to 0. And then at a particular time, namely t equal to 0, you will be starting with a certain angle. So we say that theta. And where are you going to start the experiment is we are going to start the experiment by pulling the bob away from the equilibrium position. Let us say that we are going to take it to the left side. So I'll say that this is theta maximum. Theta m I am writing minus value to say that it is negative value of theta. And then you will be also having the velocity, namely theta dot. That means the speed of the bob. And when you are going to start the experiment, you remember that we will pull the bob to the left side and hold it there. We are going to hold there. If you are going to hold it, then the bob is not moving and therefore the theta dot has to be 0. So it is going to have a 0 speed when you are performing the experiment at the beginning, at time t equals 0. The minus theta m should be quite compatible to you. It must be compatible. Otherwise, I will show the diagram once again. So in this diagram, this is what I am trying to say. So this is the place that we are going to start. So we say that initial time t equal to 0. That means at t equal to 0, I am going to hold the bob in this position, in the pink color position, and then I am going to release it. And that is what we mean to say theta maximum. Maximum means this particular bob cannot go here. So here it cannot come. So once I keep here and release, it will oscillate here only. It will never come beyond this theta. That is why we say it is theta maximum. It can of course reduce, that is fine. But theta, why do I put a suffix maximum is because the bob cannot come beyond this level. So these things are quite clear to you. And now what we are planning to do is that this is the first data and therefore that's clear. Now anything other than this, the second data onwards, you'll have to do the measurement. So what happens if you are allowing to oscillate is that the angle will become 0. That means the bob will pass through the equilibrium position. So that's what I'm writing here. But when it is going to pass, for that you'll have to measure the time. So you'll have to say that at time t1. I do not know what's the time, but you'll have to perform, then you will get some time. At a particular time, the bob will be crossing. So because I have drawn the diagram somewhere else, let us go back and see. So the bob will come right like this in this direction, and then it will cross this particular place. So the moment the ball is crossing the equilibrium position, that time is what you are going to note down. That's what I mean to say. And then after that, what happens is it crosses this equilibrium point and then reaches to this particular value, which is a theta maximum. I'll put a suffix on both the side. That is a theta maximum. It reaches to this particular place where the angle is theta maximum. And when that happens, that is time. When that happens, you'll have to note down the time. Okay. So if you note down that, then let us write down those values here. So let me write down here time t1 is the place where it has gone to 0, and then it will go to a plus theta maximum. And when that happens, the time is t2. And now what will happen to the speed? The speed is also, you can imagine what is happening because you already know how the oscillation takes place. So when the bob is in the equilibrium position, it will be moving with its maximum speed. So you should remember that it will pass through the equilibrium point with a maximum speed. So we will say that theta dot maximum. Theta dot maximum is different, theta maximum is different. They are quite different. Theta dot is angular velocity. So some maximum speed it will have, and that speed it will cross. Similarly, when you are going to have the bob in the maximum position, theta m, then the speed will be 0. So how the speed will be 0? That's quite simple. Only you'll have to refresh by looking at this particular point. So when the bob is coming like this, in this direction, and then when it is reaching the theta maximum place, it will momentarily stop there. Temporarily, it will stop there for a fraction of a second and then return back. Then after that, it will return back like this. That is clear, right? So that momentary time when it is going to reach the maximum angle, at that point, the speed is 0. Okay. It is neither going in the positive direction nor returning back. Okay. That kind of momentary snapshot. At that time, this is 0. So that's what we have written here. So this is the tabular column that we have. This is the minimum data that we have. But this data is not sufficient to plot. Okay, you'll have to measure a lot of data points in between 0 and t1. You see how many values are there. So there is a 0 is there. Then there is a time t1 is there. Then there is a time t2. But in between 0 and t1, several times are there. In between 0 and t1. So you'll have to perform the measurement in between intervals. So many data you'll have to collect. Similarly, in between t1 and t2, you'll have to collect many data. And by the way, that is not a simple experiment. You can't do it using your own eyes. You can't see the ball and then use a stop clock. Okay, it is not that simple because the oscillation takes place quite quickly. Within 1 second, the oscillation, it will reach one point and it will reach the other maximum point. So everything happens in a fraction of a second. So therefore, you can't use your own eyes and have a stop clock and do. Such a thing is not possible. You need to have some other apparatus to do this measurement. But if you are going to do the measurement, you get a data like this, and we are going to bring that data and plot it here. So let us see what is that we are going to plot. So let me show you what is the data we are bringing here. So in this x-axis, let us choose time here. So this will be the time. And here on the y-axis, let us have, we can have the y-axis. There are possible things. These are the two things. So let me write down that y will be equal to possible values of y. Both of them are y-axis. So you can have theta is one y-axis and you can also plot theta dot as another one. So you are going to show two plots on the same graph paper. So let us take this value t equal to 0 minus theta maximum. So let us search where is minus theta maximum. So this is the point. So I am going to show a round here. So that is the place where you get minus theta maximum corresponding to theta dot 0. But theta dot 0 will come later. First we will finish theta. Okay. So minus theta m is over. Then you have 0. So 0 is there corresponding to t1. So let us make 0 here. This is 0. This is 0. And let us say that this particular time is t1. So that is a t1. So this is a t-axis, right? Time axis. Therefore, in the horizontal, you will be, I am not going to show the numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. because we don't know, we don't have the number right now. So we can say that it is a t1. Then after that, what happens is theta goes to a maximum. So this is the maximum possible value. The maximum possible value, I have put it as a blue color line. Okay. The bob will not cross the blue color line and go above. So that is the limiting place. So that's why I have drawn the two lines in order to have a better guide for the drawing purpose. So now all the 3 points are shown, which means the first one theta m, yes, drawn. 0 is also drawn, and then plus theta m, all the 3 points are shown. Now it's a matter of joining them. As you know that since we are having only 3 points, if you are going to join this one, you will be getting a straight line. Okay. But in reality, it is not so. That is why I told that this is how you do the experiment. But in practice, if you want to do the experiment, you will have to collect a large number of data in between 0 and t1 and in between t1 and t2. Only then you will be knowing whether the connecting line is a straight line or some kind of curved path. So that's the point. And then coming to the actual solution, if you do the experiment, we will not have a straight line between the 3 points, and instead we will be having a curved path like this. So you'll be having a curved path like this, and you'll have to perform the experiment after T2. You'll have to again, this is not a stopping. So this will be going like this. No, you at every time this oscillation continues. First oscillation, second oscillation, third oscillation. So the table grows like this, and therefore when you collect the data and then complete this particular diagram looks like this. So that this is how the diagram looks. So finally it is taking something like sinusoidal wave. That is what we observe from the experiment. So the graph is clear now for the theta part. Now let us come to the theta dot. So theta dot also you'll have to draw. So theta dot, what is the first value? Let us see. First value appears to be 0. So we'll choose a 0 here. So this is the 0. So you see here, this is the 0 that you have. I am showing in blue color dot. First value 0 is over. Then after that, we have a positive theta m, positive value of theta dot m. So that means it will go to a maximum. M means maximum. So this is the maximum point. So it will reach there at the point T1. So you should also remember where is T1. It is the same T1 that we have. This is the T1 you have here. Right? This is the T1 that you have. So therefore, that is the point that you will be having. Now, once that is clear, then the third value will be 0. So the third value will be 0 when it is T2. So this is T2. So when it is T2, that means this particular point will be corresponding to the T2. And similarly, this is also T2. So vertically same points T. Okay, this is the T axis that you have. And then you'll be joining all these things. Once again, the joining requires many data points. Otherwise, you'll make, straight lines and straight lines. Okay, then in reality, that's not correct. If you don't have data, you'll make that kind of a mistake. So that's why you'll have to collect more data, and we'll be having a graph like this. So this is what is the appearance of the graph. So the appearance is clear. What is the clear is that this kind of blue line corresponds to the theta dot graph. Whereas the other one that we have drawn with the red color, this red color one, is the one corresponding to the theta graph, or we say that angle. I just want to write angle because dot is not there. There is a theta dot here, and therefore this must be an angular velocity. So now that's all. This is the actual data that you have. Now you are going to convert this into a phase plot diagram or a phase based diagram. So the conversion is quite simple. The only thing is that you'll have to collect all the numbers and then draw it in a single graph rather than on two graphs. So for that, what you do is let me show here itself. So we will draw one horizontal line corresponding to the I will draw one horizontal line that corresponds to the x-axis or the So let us make a diagram like this, and then one of the axis will be the theta axis, and then the vertical axis will be a theta dot axis. So this is the phase plot. In the phase plot, you will not have time. Time will not be there in the axis. One axis will be one variable. The second axis will be first derivative of that variable, theta and theta dot in this case. So now how do you plot this is, you'll have to collect the numbers. That means the data should be collected blue comma, that is you have the two graphs that are there. So one is the red color one showing theta, and then you have a blue color one. So red value first, blue value second. So take it. So what is the red value is first. This is a minus of the minus maximum value. So let us say that this is the minus of the maximum value. I'll show it here. So this is the minus of the maximum value. Then corresponding to that, you have the 0. So that's what is the shown. Okay, is this value clear? This particular one, you must be able to follow it quite easily. This is negative of the theta maximum, comma 0. So where are these 2 points are there? This is the first point. So this is the negative of the theta maximum, and this is 0. That is 0. Those are the 2 points. That is your x comma y value. Similarly, you will have to collect other values. What is the second value? The second value you see here. This is the red point. The red point is 0 here. So 0 comma theta dot maximum. So where is 0? This is 0. And comma theta dot maximum is this. So this particular point, I am making a blue color point here. So this one will be 0 comma theta dot maximum. That is your second point. Similarly, you will have to collect the third point and fourth point, which are coming from this particular table. And they will be correspondingly these 2 points, which I am showing here. One is this, and the other one will be that. And that's all. You have only 4 points. And then if you ask me to join, then you will have to only join with a straight line, and that looks like some kind of square. Okay, but as you know already that they are not straight lines, they are curved paths following some kind of sinusoidal pattern, and therefore if you have all the data with you, then the representation will be accurate, and then ultimately if you join all these points, then you get a circle. So let me draw the circle here and then show it. So here I have shown, that means here I have joined all the points. So that is the starting point will be here, and then I'll have to put an arrow as I explained in the last class. Why do you want to put arrow, and what is your starting point? That should be clear to you. The starting point is this. Once again, I'll explain that this is the starting point. The starting point is this one. So from there, as time changes, you are going to get newer and newer points, and each point is drawn, and then you are continuing to join those lines. So when you join those lines, you get a curve. That curve is also called the trajectory. In the case of the simple pendulum, it so happens that it is a circular path. That's all about it. You won't get a circular path in many of the situations. Only in this kind of simple thing, it so happens that it is a circular path. And then our conclusion is that this particular diagram that you have is what is known as the phase space diagram for a given dynamical system. And this is the simplest thing that is possible to explain with this much explanation. Okay, if you straight away take any other complicated thing and then started to explain, you will not even be able to know what is being done to generate this graph. Okay, suddenly we can always show that this is the phase plate you get for a particular oscillator. Okay, take an oscillator and immediately we can show a diagram saying that this is the phase space diagram. But if you show like that, you can't even understand how the graph is actually drawn. Okay, that is why I'm taking this example, and you'll have to take some time to understand how this is done. Okay, once this is clear, then the rest of the practical problems you'll have to do with the help of computer. Practically speaking, if you want to plot the phase space diagrams of many of the systems, you can't do it with a paper and pencil. Okay, except for very simple situations like this simple pendulum, you can't do it on a paper and pencil with your calculator. Okay, you need to take the help of a computer, and then which means that you'll have to write a program to solve the differential equation, and then the solution to the differential equation will be a collection of numbers. So that tabular column you'll have to take it to a plotting software and then plot it and see. So that amount of exercise is there in order to generate the phase space diagram. But however, this being the first time when you are learning the phase space diagram, it is always the best way to do would be this kind of small exercise on the simple pendulum, and then you will be able to appreciate what is going on when you are going to deal with the phase space. So this is the first point. The second point is I would like to then tell some of the important terminology related to the phase portrait. Okay. Phase portrait is a generic name saying that something is depicted. Depicted means you are going to display certain information. That is what is known as the portrait. And let me therefore show you on the screen how this phase plot will get complicated if we are going to deviate from the simple pendulum structure. So we are going to change the structure of the simple pendulum. And if you are going to do that, how complicated the phase space can change. Okay, you can't even imagine what kind of phase plot will emerge. That is what I am trying to say. So it goes in a very complicated manner that you can't even predict it, and that's what is known as a chaotic system or a nonlinear system. For the purpose of continuity and for the purpose of knowing the terminology involved into the system, I would like to show that. Okay, so let me now show a screen for that. Okay, here you are able to see the oscillation of a simple pendulum. That here what is the small deviation that we are planning to do is that you attach a small balloon. You take a gas filled balloon and attach it to the bob. That's what you are seeing here. Okay, the usual simple pendulum is there. In that you simply attach a small balloon, okay, gas filled balloon, and the purpose of the balloon is that the disturbance is going to be very small. Balloon is not going to affect too much because its mass is very less when compared to the original mass of the bob itself. So that's the point that we have, and we are going to see how the small disturbance to the original simple pendulum is going to modify the phase plot or the phase space diagram. That is an objective. So this is the oscillation that is quite clear to you, and let us see if we are going to draw the phase space diagram corresponding to this oscillation, how the diagram is going to look like. So that also I will now show that screen now. So this is the diagram that you have. As you can see, that green color graph is continuously being drawn. It is continuously being drawn, which means it is real time. Okay, as the pendulum is oscillating, you collect the data instantaneously and immediately you plot the data also. That means collecting the data and the plotting goes side by side very fast because this is being done by a computer. Things go the spot, that is the time at which you collect, immediately you go to the plot and then put the point and then connect the lines. That's what is happening. And as you can see that we are able to see the circle as the phase plot. So to that extent we are happy, which means that what do you mean by happy is that the balloon that we attached to the original simple pendulum did not affect the original simple pendulum. As you can see that there is a small spreading out. Okay, it is not a thin line, but it is slightly thick line. Now, where from the thick line comes in, slightly the circular path slightly changes. That is why thickness has come. Okay, I will increase the disturbance a little bit more, and you can see what happens. That is first thing. Second thing, you see that the point is, you can see that the rotation goes like this round. You must be able to see that the plot is going in this clockwise direction. So I am talking about the direction. That is the direction of increasing time. So when time is increasing, this round it will keep on increasing. Okay. So one round that it makes is the 1 period approximately, if it is periodic system. If it is non-periodic system, well, you can't do that. So for this simple situation, you can have the periodicity to be connected to the phase space diagram. But for non-periodic oscillations, you can't make such connection. Okay. So now what I will do is I will increase the disturbance due to the balloon, which means that you can, how do you increase the disturbances? You increase the mass of the balloon, for example. If I am going to increase the mass of the balloon, then we are going to disturb the original pendulum. That's what I mean to say. So let me do that. So now you are able to see that the original circular path is getting deviated. That means it's deviating and then slightly taking different shapes. The important point that I would like to tell you is that the trajectory of the circle is not repeated on top of each other. That means the circle is not repeated second time, third time, etc. Okay. In the case of the normal and the usual pendulum, the first circle and the second circle, they will be the same. Okay. The second circle will be essentially on top of the first circle, which is overlapping. But now you see that every time you are going to draw the phase plot, it is not at all matching with the previous oscillation, which means that the oscillations are getting disturbed in a different way. You can't predict what kind of oscillation is going to be there in the future. So this is a very small disturbance because it's a balloon, right? It's a balloon and therefore very small disturbance. But suppose if you remove the balloon and attach a little bit heavy object, okay, then things will get too much complicated and you can't even expect a circular path in the phase space diagram. We will see that now. So now I have increased the mass of the balloon quite a bit. It is no longer balloon, by the way. It's a kind of a small metal piece attached to that, and you can see that the trajectory. So that is why we don't say plot, right? Phase, space, trajectory. Trajectory means the set of all points are simply joined, connected as time changes. So you are actually seeing that it is moving through different trajectories. You don't follow the same circular path, and this kind of complicated structure will get even more complicated if you are going to increase the length of the second pendulum. The second pendulum means, you understand what is second pendulum? There is a small secondary balloon structure that is hanging. You increase the length of that. Right now it is simply attached directly on that, so you don't have any length for that. So let us increase that length also, so that the disturbance is enormous. So let us see that. So this is what I mean to say, that if you are going to increase the length of this particular pendulum, second pendulum, then the oscillations is going to be like this. And corresponding to this, what would be the phase space trajectory? So that we will see now. So this is the real time plotting of the phase space trajectory as the double pendulum is oscillating. And we will call this kind of a pendulum as double pendulum. It is actually the secondary simple pendulum attached to the primary simple pendulum. Two simple pendulums are there. The bottommost one oscillating is a simple pendulum. You attach it to the original first pendulum. Now, such kind of configuration is what we call the double pendulum, and the variables involved are theta 1 and theta 2. And now you can see that the structure of the phase space trajectory is getting complicated, and we can't give any name what kind of structure it is. Okay, so we say that this kind of behavior is what is known as nonlinear behavior or chaotic behavior. Okay, that is ultimately we are interested to see that the phase space is the one that is used to describe the dynamics in general. Okay, so probably this is a better place that we can stop with reference to this animation. So this is another situations where the disturbances are quite heavy. So now the second bob and the first bob, both of them are typically of the same mass. Okay, the earlier case you started with the balloon, so slight disturbance. Now it is not so. Both the masses are equally massive. They are not identically same, but two different masses. Now you see how the phase space trajectory is getting complicated. So in this way, our conclusion that I would like to make here is that there is no simple way of describing the phase space portrait. You can't describe anything easily. Only for the very simple pendulum, you can say that the phase space diagram is a circle. And that's all. Only for a very simple situation, you can explain. For all other situations, we can't practically explain what is the structure of the phase space diagram. And because of that reason, because the geometry getting complicated, now let me write down the important terminology corresponding to this. That I will write down now. We will use the word trajectory as long as it is very simple. When things get complicated, especially with the higher dimension, I hope you understand what is meant by higher dimension. When we move on to the case of the double pendulum, you have two angles. One is theta 1 and another is theta 2. Two angles are required. One for the bottom pendulum and the other one for the top pendulum. And since you have theta 1 and theta 2, naturally theta 1 dot and theta 2 dots are also required. Which means theta 1 comma, I'll put a comma here, which means theta 1 comma, theta 2 comma, theta 1 dot, comma, theta 2 dot. You need these four variables are required in order to specify the system completely. That means double pendulum completely. So therefore, this is a four-dimensional situation. You can't draw all the four variables. Where will you draw it? You can't draw it. So basically, anything that you want to draw to understand something is to draw theta 1 comma theta 1 dot. You draw like this. You make one graph. And then you draw theta 2 comma theta 2 dot. Another graph. And then try to understand from these two graphs. That's what you can do. But what I am trying to say is, in the mathematical space, all the four variables exist together. Theta 1, theta 2, theta 1 dot and theta 2 dot. And This is a 4-dimensional case. And the moment you exceed 3 is what is known as higher dimensional. So if you are going to draw all the variables, that means theta 1 comma theta 1 dot with, I am writing here with theta 2 comma theta 2 dot in a single plot. You can't draw it, but if you draw, that is what I mean to say. But if you draw that, then mathematically these trajectories are known as manifolds. So that is what we mean to say. Okay, manifold is what is the higher dimensional equivalent of the trajectories, and correspondingly the simple geometries. You say that for the case of simple pendulum, it's a circle. Okay, the word circle clearly tells there is a geometry involved. It may be an ellipse. Elliptical path can be there. Okay, circular path can be there, or a straight line path can also be there. When situations are very simple, then we say that it is a geometric property, or we say that certain geometry is there. That is what we used to say. But when things get complicated in higher dimensional space, then we don't use the name geometry, but instead we will use the name topology. So ultimately, what is our conclusion is that in the classical mechanics, we are basically studying the topological properties of the manifolds. That is what is going to happen. That means essentially in the case of the lower dimensions, we are going to study the geometrical properties of the trajectories. Geometrical properties of trajectory means if the trajectory is a circle, then you study the geometrical properties of the circle. You know what are the geometrical properties of circle. If I give you an ellipse, what are the geometrical properties of ellipse? You know that. For a hyperbola, you know that. These are known as geometrical properties of trajectories. But when things get complicated in higher dimensions, then we say that they are topological properties of manifolds. Okay, and the corresponding mathematics becomes fairly complicated. So this is the introduction that I would like to tell. Okay. This gives you a glimpse, or it gives you an idea about what is meant by a phase trajectory and how the phase trajectories can get complicated, especially in higher dimensions. Of course, everything will enter into the higher dimension. There is nothing will be there in lower dimensions excepting for very simple situations. So in all other cases, practically all of them will be in higher dimension. Therefore, a knowledge of the topology, a knowledge of the differential geometry is going to give you a better understanding of physics. So you can now imagine you can at least imagine what level of mathematics is required to understand further. Okay, if you want to understand geometrical properties, you need to know 2-dimensional coordinate geometry, 3-dimensional coordinate geometry, etc. But however, when you are moving to higher dimensions, you need to learn the topology and the differential geometry. So right now for the classical mechanics course, such knowledge is not much required. But in general, in case if you want to go for a research work, something in theoretical physics, you need more about the differential geometries. Okay, that will give you a great idea about, and even if you are going to learn, for example, the theory of relativity, the general theory of relativity, then you need the knowledge of topology will help you to understand these things in a great manner. So that is the first thing. And second thing is I would like to give some terminology related to the case of simple pendulum. So that I will show it now. Yeah. So this is the phase place diagram. Now you know already what it is. This is the one corresponding to the simple pendulum. And only thing is that the interior circle, or the small circle that you are able to see, that is what I have explained using 4 numbers, 4 data in a tabular column. And if you are going to collect a lot of data with various oscillations, okay, one circle corresponds to one oscillation. So let me just show it here. For if you are going to draw a phase-based diagram like this and make a circle like this, and say that we are going to start here, this is the starting point, and then as time changes, this is how we are going to draw. This corresponds to one oscillation. One oscillation means, one oscillation doesn't mean a single oscillation. One oscillation corresponding to one theta max. Theta max 1, I'll say suffix 1. That means let us say 5 degree. 5-degree oscillation you can make, right? And that is called one experiment. You do an experiment with a 5-degree oscillation and then draw the phase space diagram. That is what it is. Suppose if you repeat it with a 10-degree oscillation, you can also make another plot, right? You can have theta max 2, which is equal to 10 degrees. Now you oscillate the bob with 10 degrees, and then if you repeat the experiment, then you will be getting a bigger circle. That is what I am trying to show now. So if you are going to repeat the experiment with another theta like 10 degrees, then that will be the second one. So I am now showing here. So this is the one, for example, this circle. The first circle that you have is the one corresponding to theta maximum equal to say 5 degree. So similarly, you can increase the amplitude. So if the amplitude of the oscillation, you increase it and then repeat the experiment, then you will be getting each one circle corresponding to that. You will be getting bigger and bigger circle corresponding to the larger oscillation of the simple pendulum. That is what is the meaning that you get it from this particular diagram. But what is interesting is that if you keep on increasing the amplitude, like 10 degree or then 15 degree I will do, 20 degree I will do, 25 degree. If you keep on repeating this experiment, will you get all the time circle as the phase space diagram, or something else will appear? That is the question. And the answer is not trivial unless you do the experiment. So this is the result of the experiment. So people have done the experiment with various angles, starting from very small angle like 5 degree, 10 degree, 15 degree, 20, 25, etc. So as you can see that you are getting a bigger and bigger circle until certain point. You see here after this particular thing which is shown here is no longer circular path. And that is clear. You can see this. You follow this particular arrow, okay, and check it out whether it is circular or not. It is not circle. The circle is now distorted, and it is something like some kind of an ellipse. It cannot be pure ellipse also. So ellipse is also distorted. So a structure which is now deviated from both circle and the ellipse. And afterwards, what is happening, if you see the next one, if you see here, this structure is also coming to an end. So you see this particular point. So this is the point I am trying to show. Maybe I will change the color. So here it is, this one. So this is the place where even the elliptical orbit is also gone. The elliptical orbit is also opened up, and therefore some kind of an hyperbolic structure is emerging, which means the ellipse part is opened up, right? And therefore it is open structure is there. So therefore you see that there are some changes are taking place when you increase the amplitude. You can't say that every time you increase the amplitude, just like that you will get a bigger and bigger circle. Such kind of prediction is not possible. And why this is happening is everything is because of the sine theta. So if you ask the question why all these things are happening, the answer is it's all because of the sine theta. If the sine theta term is approximated as you do in school, then you get only circle as the consequence. So the circular one is the one corresponding to sine theta approximately equal to theta. That is called a linear approximation. If you don't want to make such approximation and keep the sine theta intact in the original equation, then you will get all possible structure in the phase space diagram. You get elliptical orbits, circular orbits are there, hyperbolic orbits are there. So this is the information that I would like to say, so that you feel that the information is somewhat more complete. And in addition, I would also like to tell some terminology related to this. Each one of these circles, say for example, this particular circle, I will take here. I will take the line here and then write down here. There is a circle here, right? You are able to follow the cursor, some plus. Okay, the cursor looks like a plus. Okay, the red line that is coming here, no, that is the one that I am talking about. This is known as a limit cycle. Okay, you can choose any one of them. For example, you can also choose this one. Let me show it with another color here. See, for example, this particular line that you are going to have is also an example of a limit cycle. Okay, limit cycle means the orbit. Okay, orbit, trajectory. We use different names for that. Okay, sometimes it may be closed orbit. Sometimes it may not be closed. You have already seen them. Closed orbits are the one circle and ellipses. Open orbits you have already seen in the double pendulum cases. Okay, the trajectory will keep on evolving new and new places, and it will never close. So they are known as open orbits. So this particular orbit where you have this kind of closed circle is here what is known as a limit cycle. So that is one of the frequently used terminology that is there in the system. And another important terminology in this phase space diagram is the place where a particular thing changes, the structure changes completely. You see, closed orbit is changing to an open orbit structure. Where it is happening, you see in this one. This blue color arrow I am drawing, right? That is the one. So this particular place or the orbit corresponding to that is going to be a situation where closed orbit is becoming open orbit. So the next one is the open orbit. So this one is open orbit. The next one is a closed orbit. So there is a change from one structure to the other structure. When this happens, then that particular orbit is known as homoclinic orbit. So let me write down that. So it is generally how do you define a homoclinic orbit is that it is a trajectory of the flow of the dynamical system that lies in the intersection of the stable and unstable manifolds. So that is how you define it. In this definition, there is one word is coming, namely the flow of the dynamical system. So let me write down, because there is also another technical point that I would like to explain. It is the flow of the dynamical system. This particular word will be used frequently. So the word flow is used because there is this particular arrows are there. So it appears that something is flowing, right? You can think that water is flowing in this direction or air is flowing like this direction, something like that. It looks like something is flowing there because of the arrows. Basically, it is a temporal evolution of a dynamical system. Temporal evolution means with reference to the time, the dynamical system changes. That is what is known as the temporal evolution of a dynamical system. And because of the structure or with the arrows here, people also use the word flow of the dynamical system. Both are same ultimately. So it is in the simple pendulum is not flowing. Nothing is flowing with the simple pendulum, but the phase space trajectories have the arrows there. And therefore, it looks like something is flowing there. And therefore, this particular terminology, flow of dynamical system, is frequently used when you are studying the phase space portrait. So let me therefore once again repeat the definition of the homoclinic orbit. So it is the homoclinic orbit is basically the trajectory of the flow of the dynamical system that lies in the intersection of stable and unstable manifolds. Stable manifold means the one which is properly closed orbits like circle and ellipse. The moment they are closed, most of them they are stable, which means that they will repeat itself. That is called stable. Unstable means this is the open one. See, for example, this is open. This particular structure here, you see these kind of lines. It is going like this. This line. These things are opened. So you don't know what will happen if you are going to perform the experiment after these limits. But in the case of circle, you can predict. It will be always within the circular path. That is what is known as the stable manifold and unstable manifold. Now the homoclinic orbit, if you consider, it is the orbit that is going to separate these two. On the interior, you see stable orbits. On the exterior, you see unstable orbit. So homoclinic orbit is the orbit that is going to separate these two. That's all about it. So that is how the terminology is coined. So important terminologies are flow of the dynamical system, homoclinic orbit, limit cycle, and then you also known as, there are important terms are the fixed points. So let me also tell what is meant by a fixed point. I'm going to put a dot in the center of the circle. So you observe that blue color, I think it is blue color. So in the blue color, I'm going to put a dot in the center. So this particular thing that I have shown here is known as a fixed point. So these are the standard terminologies that are used in the study of the phase space diagrams. But for your syllabus or in your syllabus, you are not going to discuss in a very detailed manner on the phase space diagram. Not very much is required. So the information that I have given here will be generally sufficient unless you do some special course on nonlinear dynamics. If you are going to take a special paper on nonlinear dynamics, yes, then in that case, you have to study more details on the phase-space diagram, how actually to draw them, and you'll have to learn more about how to classify the critical points, how to classify fixed points. Fixed point is not a single point. Fixed points are also, you can always classify a stable fixed point, elliptic fixed point, hyperbolic fixed points, like this. There are many classifications are there. So such details are not required for the MSc course right now for the classical mechanics. So hopefully this is a sufficient introduction to the phase portrait. And in particular, I would like to emphasize the terms topology and manifold. So when the things get complicated, the geometry gets complicated, we say that we are entering into the mathematical language of topology. And correspondingly, any graph that is drawn in the mathematical space is known as the manifold. So that is the important, these are some of the important terminologies that are required in order to learn more about the dynamical system. So in the next class, hopefully this information is sufficient. We can proceed now towards the Hamilton's principle itself, because I've been telling that we will be dealing with the Hamilton's principle. So exactly that can be done in the next class. Okay, we will meet in the next class.